Chapter 9. WEEMERGEFROM. The palace. While the sun was still in part above the horizon, I was determined to reach the White Sphinx early the next morning, and ere the dusk I purposed pushing through the woods that had stopped me and had previous journey. Mittel was to go possible that night, and then, building a fire, to sleep in the protection of its glare. Accordingly, as we went along I gathered any sticks or dried grass I saw, and presently had my arms full of such litter. The slow to our progress was slower than I had anticipated, and beside as we now was stirred and began to suffer from sleepiness too, so that it was full night before we reached the wood. Upon the shrub visage we not all have stopped fearing the darkness before us, but a singular sense of impending calamity, that should indeed have served me as a warning, drove me onward. I had been without sleep for a night and 2 days, and I was feverish and irritable. I felt sleep coming upon me, and the Morlocks with it. While we hesitated, among the black bushes behind us, and dim against their blackness, I saw 3 crouching figures. There was scrub and long grass all about us, and I did not feel safe from their insidious approach. The first cycle, cool-wooded, was rather less than a mile across. If we could get through the Birel side their asset Cementum was an altogether safer resting place. I thought that with the me matches and my camphor I could contrive to keep my path illuminated through the woods. Yet it was evident that if I was to flourish matches with my hands I should have to abandon my firewood, so, rather reluctantly, I put it down. And then it came into my head that I would amaze our friends behind be lighting it. I was to discover the trollseer's folly of this proceeding, but it came to my mind as an ingenious move for covering our retreat. I don't know if you have ever thought what a rare thing flame must be in fibs and seaman and natum paratechly, mate. The sun's heat is rarely strong enough to burn, even when nitrous focus be dewdrops as sometimes the casing more tropical districts. Lightning may blast and blacken, but it rarely gives rise to widespread fire. Decaying vegetation may occasionally smolder with the heat of its fermentation, but this rarely results in flame. In this decadence, too, the art of fire-making had been forgotten on the earth. The red tongues that went licking up my heap of wood were an altogether new and strange thing to Weena. She wanted to run to it and play with it. I believe she would have cast herself into it had not restrained her. Beauty caught her up, and in spite of her struggles, plunged boldly before Riemann topped the wood. For a little way the glare of fire-lit hepathy. Looking back presently I see old sea thrust he crowded stems, that from my heap of sticks the blaze had spread to some bushes adjacent, and a curved line of fire was creeping up the grass of the hill. I laughed at that, and turned again off the dark trees before him. It was black, and we clung to me convulsively, but there was still, as my eyes grew accustomed to the darkness, sufficient light for me to avoid the stems. Overhead it was simply black, except where agapotrimate blue sky shone out new prenews here and there. I struck none of my matches because I had no hand free. Upon my left arm I carried my little one, in my right hand I had my iron bar. For some way I heard nothing but the crackling twigs under my feet, the faint rustle of the breeze above, and my own brief and thrown buffed blood vessels in my ears. Night men talk no off powder about me. I pushed grimly. The pattering grew more distinct, and then I caught the same queer sound and voices I had heard in the underworld. There were evidently several of the Morlocks, and they were closing in upon me. Indeed, in another minute I felt a tug at my coat, then something at my arm. And Weena shivered violently, and became quite still. It was time for a match. But to get one I must put her down. I did so, and as she fumbled with me pocket a struggle began in the darkness about my knees, perfectly silent on her part and with the same peculiar cooing sounds from the Morlocks. Soft little hands to her recreant government coat and back touching given me neck. Then Temich scratched and fizzed. I held it flaring, and saw the white backs of the Morlocks in flight amid the trees. I hastily took a lump of camphor from my pocket, and prepared to light it as soon as Temich should wane. Twina was lying clutching my feet and quite motionless, with her face to the ground. With a sudden fright stupendo she seemed scarcely to breathe. I lit the block of camphor and flunged it up the ground, and a supplied and reduced hand with back the Morlocks and the shadow signal down and lifted her. The wood behind seemed full of the stir and murmur of the great company. She's meant to hog finded. I put her carefully upon my shoulder and rose to push on, and then there came a horrible realization. In maneuvering with my matches and weena, I had turned myself about several times, and no, I had not the faintest idea in what direction lay my path. For all I knew, I might be facing back towards the palace of green porcelain. I found myself in a cold sweat. I had to think rapidly what to do. I determined to build a fire and encamp where we were. I put weena, still motionless, down upnator the bowl, and very hastily as my first lump of camphor waned, I began collecting sticks and leaves. Here and there out of the darkness round me the Morlock's eyes shone like carbuncles. The camphor flickered and went out. A little much Honda as it did so. Tau high forms half they'd been approaching. Weena dashed hastily away. One was so blinded by the light that he came straight for me, and I felt his bones grind under the blow off at my fist. Hippopotatisma staggered a little and fell down. He lit another piece off a camphor and went on gathering my bonfire. Presently I noticed how dry was some of the foliage above me, for since my arrival on the time machine, a matter of a week, no rain had fallen. So instead of castilabutaement the trees for fallen twigs, I began dragging down branches. Very soon, I had a choking smoky fire of green wood and dry sticks, and could economize my camphor. Then I turned to where Weena lay beside my iron mace. I tried what I could to revive her, but she lay like one dead. I could not even satisfy myself whether or not she breathed. Now the smoke out the fire beat over towards them, and it must have made me heavy of a sudden. Moreover, the vapor of camphor was in the air. My fire would not need replenishing the ran however, so I felt very weary after my exertion and sat down. The wood to wasful low slump brutes murmured that I did not understand. I seemed just to nod and opened my ears. Butalwizard and Themerwatch had their hands upon me. Flinging off their clinging fingers, I hastily felt in my pocket for a matchbox and iPad an exclamation point. Then they gripped and closed with me again. In a moment I knew what had happened. I had slept, and my fire had gone out, and the bitterness of death came over my soul. The forest seemed full of the smell of burning wood. I was caught by the neck, by the hair, by the arms, and pulled down. It was indescribably horrible in the darkness to feel all these soft creatures heaped upon me. I felt as if I was in a monstrous spider's web. I was overpowered, and went down. I felt little teeth nipping at my neck. I rolled over, and as I did so my hand came against my iron lever. It gave me strength. I struggled up, shaking the human rats from me, and, holding the bar short, I thrust where I judged their faces might be. I see old Fealty's succulent jiving got flesh and bone under my blows, and for a moment I was free. The strange exultation but often seems to accompany hard fighting came upon me. I knew that both I and we were lost, but I determined to make the Morlocks pay for their meat. I stood with my back to a tree, swinging the iron bar before me. The wallwood was full of Hester and Chrysostom. A minute passed. Their voice rose to a higher pitch of excitement, and their movements grew faster. Yet none came within reach. I stood glaring at the blackness. Then suddenly came hope. What if the Morlocks were afraid? And close on the heels of that came a strange thing. The darkness seemed to grow luminous. Very dim light. I began to see the Morlocks about me. Three battered at my feet, and then I recognized, with incredulous surprise, that the others were running, in an incessant stream, as it seemed, from behind me, and away through the wood in front. And their backs met a large white butterdish. As I stood agape, I saw a little red spark go drifting across a gap of starlight between the branches, and vanish. And at that I understood the smell of burning wood, the slump brutes murmured that was growing now into a gusty roar, the red glow, and the Morlock's flight. Stepping out from behind my tree and looking back, I saw thrusty black pillars soft honeyberry trees, the flames of the burning forest. It was my first fire coming after me. With fate I looked for Weena, but she was gone. Hissing and crackling behind me, the explosive thud as each fresh tree burst into flames, left little time for reflection. My iron bar still gripped, I followed in the Morlock's path. It was a close race. Once the flames crept forward so swiftly on my right side that he was outflanked and had to strike out to the left. But at last I emerged upon a small open space, and as I did so, the Morlock came blundering towards me, and passed me. and went on straight into the fire. And no he wasto see the most weird and horrible thing, I think, of all that I beheld in that future age. This whole spaceway is as bright as day with the reflection of fire. In the center was a helicumulus, surmounted by a scorched hawthorn. Beyond this was another arm of the burning forest, with yellow tongues already rising from it completely encircling that space with a fancy fire. Upon the hillside were some 30 or 40 more locks, dazzled beneath the light and heat, and blundering hither and thither against each other in their bewilderment. At first I did not realize their blindness, and struck furiously at them with the meat barn, in a frenzy of fear, as they approached me, killing one and crippling several more. But when I had watched the gestures of one of them groping under the hawthorn against the red sky, and heard their moans, I was assured of their absolute helplessness and misery in the glare, and I struck no more of them. Yet every now and then one would come straight towards me, setting loose a quivering horror that made me quick to elude him. And the method flames lay down some. What end if the red these foul creatures would present livable to see me? I was thinking of beginning the fight by killing some of them before this should happen, but the fire burst out again brightly and stayed my hand. I walked about till among them and avoided them, looking for some trace of Weena. But Weena was gone. At last I sat down on the summit of the hillock, and watched this strange incredible company of blind things cropping to and fro and making gun-cannon noises as the glare of the fire beat on them. The coiling uprush of smoke streamed across the sky, and through the rare textures of that red canopy, remote as though they belonged to another universe, shone the little stars. 2 or 3 more locks came blundering into me, and I drove them off with blows of my fists, trembling as I did so. For that most perturbed half night I was persuaded it was a nightmare. I bit myself and screamed in a passionate deep firato awake. I beat the ground with me hands and got up and sat down again, and wandered here and there, and again sat down. Then I would fall to rubbing my eyes and calling upon God to let me awake. Thrice I saw more locks put their heads down in a kind of agony and rush into the flames. But at last above it subsiding there doffed fire above the streaming mass of soft black smoky and through tightening and blackening tree stumps, and the diminishing numbers of these dim creatures, came the white light of the day. I searched again for traces of Weena, but there were none. It was plain that they had left her poor little buddy in the forest. I cannot describe how it triviated me to think that it had escaped the awful fate to which it seemed destined. As I thought of that, I was almost moved to begin the massacre of the helpless abominations about me, but I contained myself. The hillock, as I have said, was a kind of island in the forest. From its summit I could now make out the hazy smoke fatally soft green porcelain, and from that I could get my bearings for the White Sphinx. And so, leaving the remnant of these damp souls still going to here and thither and moaning, as the day grew clearer, I tied some grass about my feet and limped on across smoking ashes and among black stems, that still pulsated internally with fire, towards the hiding place of the time machine. I walked slowly for a ways at most exhausted as well as me, and I felt the intensest wretchedness for the horrible death of little Weena. It meant an overwhelming calamity. Now, in this old familiar room, it is more like the sorrow of a dream than an actual loss. But that morning it left me absolutely lonely again, terribly alone. I began to think of this house save me and office fireside off me Ohio, and with such thoughts came a longing that was pain. Beautiful. I walked over that smoking gashes under that bright morning ski immediately in my trouser pocket were still some loose matches. The box must have leaked before it was lost.